Well, hello everybody. Welcome to Sonictalk, episode 772, recording today, Wednesday the 20th, not the 13th, as I had in the poster frame, beg your pardon, of September. This is the Music Technology Show. We talk about all the news from the music tech world, including instruments, software, production stuff, all the tech that's happening everywhere, and there's lots of it about. It's back. We're back from a rather bereft summer of scrabbling about, looking for things to talk about. We've got a bit more stuff, although it hasn't filled up full steam yet, and not all of it's completely happy news, but we'll get there. I want to say thank you very much to all our friends in the IRC. Special shout out to Wagyu for his moderation, and we're making all the stuff work in the background. He's looking after the back end of this, because if you're watching on Twitch, or you're watching on Facebook, or you're watching on YouTube, or IRC, actually not Facebook, but the others, you can, and Discord, you can basically comment there, and they will show up in a sort of master comments, and they cross post. In fact, if you've got any questions that you'd like to ask, we do try and get around to it, but not always. Just start it with QQ, and if we don't get around to it this week, it will go into the queue, and we'll see them for next week. I mean, obviously they might not be relevant by the time we get around to it, but I'm not making a very good job of selling this, am I? But anyway, you should also consider joining us on Discord. We got an invite there, bit.ly/Sonic Discord. I've got a growing community of people there that like to get stuck in. And while I'm at admin mode, I want to say, well, join us on Patreon. Hey, why not? Why not consider joining us on Patreon? It's a great way to support the site and keep the lights on in these lean ad times. Even at the lower level, you'll get all the Sonictalk pre-show, also available ad-free. You'll get ad-free content from YouTube, as well as a whole bunch of stuff that we've just actually posted from the EMOM, which includes long-form interviews. That's at the lower tier. If you join at the upper tier, you get all of that, plus we'll get additional exclusive videos, and we did some 360 videos from the EMOM, which is a great way to see around exactly what sort of gear they're using. There's also samples and patch downloads, plus both tiers get the access to our Discord, which you're more than welcome to join. Lots of great people chatting there, so why not join us? If you join at the upper level, you'll get your name and credits at the end of the show. Much appreciated. Anyway, thanks for listening. Back to the show. Oh, I recorded a new one, because yes, we do have a whole bunch of the 360 videos, which are great there. Just a bit more housekeeping. Patreon have also organised now collections. They finally got it together to update the system, because it was a nightmare. So now there's collections, and Andy's been working on kind of grouping things together, making it easy to find. So we've got like 370 posts there, so you might want to just scroll through a big list. Also, no show next week. I've got a break, just taking a break, and then when we get back, next weekend, not this weekend coming, next weekend is going to be Machine and Brystronica, and the weekend after that, Synthfest. So it's going to be a very busy time, so keep an eye out for stuff. We've got an Ableton Push 3 feature where we talk to Simon Stokes about going from the studio across to Push 3 in standalone mode and how you might use that in a live situation. And I've got the Norand synth, the Norand Mono here, which I'm looking forward to. I'm not going to get around to it just yet, but just thought I'd say it arrived, so looking forward to getting my hands on that. Anyway, we'll get on to our guests. First up, we've got Mr. Robin Vincent from Molten Music Tech, who's there in his shed, fresh from his own EMOM performance. A great video, Robin, on the whole process and the experience. Really, I found that very interesting, particularly the kind of when you got to the next day and you said, well, okay, all those decisions I made about my rack and what I was going to do, how did they work out? What was that? I mean, and you're right, it's a massive learning process, isn't it? I mean, did you find it refreshing to do something like that was more in the moment? I know you made content out of it, but how was the actual evening?
Yeah, no, always. I mean, I'm always intending to go every single month, because it's on like the first Thursday every month, and I plan to go, and then other things get in the way. Mostly taking kids to places, annoyingly. But yes, doing an EMOM it's just it's a thing that you can do on the spur of the moment. You don't feel you have to have prepared deeply, but certainly you're going to put some thought into it. And I think And those processes are really interesting because you're throwing yourself into a slightly chaotic live situation where you don't have a great deal of control over what's going on, but it's short enough for that not really to matter. You're never going to put yourself in a dangerous situation. You're never going to feel like, oh, I completely failed, because you could probably just turn it on and walk away and come back 15 minutes later and people go, oh, we'll give you a polite round of applause, But if you can do more than that, then you have an opportunity to try stuff out. Will it work if I do? Is it interesting to do this? Can I reach that button and do that at the same time while not being able to see properly and not being able to hear properly, and 2 beers in, that kind of thing. So it's a fascinating experience. I think I'd highly recommend it.
And very uplifting. I mean, the thing that we found after we did ours, I mean, I'm banging on about it, but it's just this massive adrenaline high and just really good energy, because we did end up with a lot of just happy people, and it makes you feel good. And also, I think as we do as an organizer, as we try and get each one more and more better, you come away thinking, yeah, we did some more. It wasn't worse. There's a sort of trajectory, and it's very, very good fun. Anyway, I'm glad to hear it worked out for you, Robin. We've also got Yoad Nevo there with a barking dog in a very echoey room, but glad to have him. So I'm guessing Yoad is not in London today, but probably in somewhere nice and warm and out of the sun. How are you?
Yeah, I'm very well, thanks. Yeah, I'm here in Portugal, but I've taken some work with me. I'm working on a really kick-ass drill mix, and it's just unbelievable how the kick, the whole thing is the kick. It's all about the kick. It's just all about the kick, and it has to be hard, and it has to be really big, and it has to have all these harmonics, but it can't be distorted like a hardcore kick. You know what I mean? It has to be clean, punchy, big, dirty, in your face, fat,
Right.
everything. And it's just so I started the mix in the studio in London, and I'm tweaking it now, and then I'm gonna finish it tomorrow when I'm back in the studio. Also working on some production, and I'm actually recording guitars here, and I kind of discovered the DI sound on the Scarlett, those little Focusrite thingies. I don't know which one I have, an old one, second generation or whatever, and it's almost too good. I mean, usually the kind of DI, the high Z inputs on those sound cards, traditionally they were horrible, and this one, especially on the Strat, the instrument input is really, really bright, and it sounds really lovely without having to do much to it. So much so that I actually switched it to the line input, so it's kind of the wrong impedance, so you lose some of the top end and you get some of the fatness. No noise, so obviously it has to have more gain, but kind of enjoying that. I have all my fancy DIs and stuff back in the studio, but there's something about recording a guitar in a room, in a house, not in the studio. And there's something there's some freedom in that.
Right.
And so I'm enjoying that.
I'm disappointed. I am a bit disappointed, Joe, because I in my head I'm thinking, right, he's got an AC30 the other side of that room, and he's going to put a ribbon mic up in the corner, and it's going to be roomy as hell. But it's not. That's not the sound you're going for. I like the idea that you went there for the sound of the room to record your guitars, but that's not the case in this instance.
That's not the case. However, one time when I was in Tel Aviv, I used to have a setup there as well, and I didn't have an amp, and I had to record a bass, through an amp, because plugins sometimes don't cut it. That was a long time ago. They didn't cut it back then. And what I did, I had this active, I think it's Altec, like one of these active speakers,
Oh,
and
yeah.
I plugged the bass straight into that, and I recorded the speaker through the MacBook mic. And it does the trick, because when you have some air moving, yeah, the sound quality wasn't great, but the vibe, because it was kind of a disco kind of raw track, and it had to have that kind of bass sound. That was what was moving the entire track. And and with some trickery and stuff, but at least when you get the basic, the rawness of the and the playing and all that, so yeah, sometimes you get by with what you have, and otherwise it would be boring if we all had, we all have the perfect gear and all the perfect plugins and everything.
I know what you mean. I go back. I had this one guitar sound in a demo I used to do. I had, which was a Porta Studio, and I remember I plugged the guitar in directly into the Porta Studio channel, turned the guitar right up so it was distorted. Horrible Porta Studio mic preamp distortion, and I also recorded me playing the electric guitar in the room and blended them together, and everybody I played it to went, "Wow, what an amazing guitar sound! What's that?" And I was like, "Yeah, that was 30. I've never surpassed that. It was 30 years ago at least, and 40 probably. And I've never been able to better it. But I don't record guitars, so I don't feel I have to worry about it too much. Anyway, lovely to have you both. So plenty to be going on with. I suppose Woody Forrest will be delighted, because he's been hassling in the chat room for weeks. He's always telling me that how to report on things. But finally, we've actually got a topic he may be interested in. So here we go. This is the new Yamaha synthesizer sneak peek. Yamaha have just posted their the sneak peek of what we think is the Montage M. I know Robbie Pericelli wrote the original story on Gear News, and there's some synths demos here. Let's see if this might work. I think it actually these sound nice, I think. The Montage M, which apparently has ANX engine with FMX and AWM2, we think, and it's all still at T's level. What else is there? There's a couple of other really nice ones in here. I should play. What's that? Where's the piano? There was a piano. Piano sounded really nice, I thought. Actually, if I scroll down, we can show some teasy pictures of it all as well. So, new touchscreen. I mean, basically, I can't really see much of a difference between this and the other Montage, apart from the fact it may look like it's got more of a Modi X construction vibe, which is sort of lower cost, and so maybe the whole thing is going to be just a little less expensive. I don't know. Hold on, I probably need to figure out how to turn that off, because it's all got a bit Muzak. I don't know. I mean, I must admit, workstations don't generally get me all that thrilled, but I have to say, I had the Modi X here just as a sort of demo. I didn't review the whole thing, but just the sound of it and the sound of those Yamahas, and the same goes for the big Roland workstations. There's something about the sound of them that definitely is an improvement over your average sort of dedicated instrument. I mean, not talking great analog stuff, but your average sort of maybe DSP or multi workstation. They have a thing going on. I know, Robin, I mean, you write for Gear News as well. You will have probably covered these forever. People get really evangelical, and say Woody Forrest. He was so upset that we didn't cover the rumours before they actually posted it. I mean, literally, last week he was insulting me in the chat. I told him off, but hopefully this week he's happy. People get very evangelical about these things, don't they?
They do. It's a big deal, I guess. I mean, the first whiff we had of it was Yamaha discontinuing it, which was a little bit of oh, really? Everyone's sort of fed up with these kind of workstation keyboards? Oh, I don't blame them. I would have thought to myself, maybe it's time to move on to something exciting, and Yamaha are going to dazzle us with the CS80 V2. You know, who knows what could come out of those minds over there. But no, we get the Montage back with another letter. And but people Montage do get very excited about these sorts of things. Yeah, and I mean, quite rightly so. I guess it's one of that weird things where it's the sort of synthesizer when you walk into a music shop, you kind of look at, and then you wander off and play with other things. But it's not. But it's also the sort of synthesizer that when you actually sit down and play one, it does have this depth of sound engine which you won't find anywhere else. You could sit down and just play with that forever, and you wouldn't need to to dabble in other synthesizers, but it's not the sort of platform that I want to spend any time in particularly, although I do appreciate the sound. But then the sound is I think it's sort of it's a studio perfection sound. It's a live performance perfection sound. It's the sound where you're trying to become a whole range of different instruments in different scenarios. And so it doesn't have to have character. It doesn't have to have a quirk to it. It needs to sort of do the job every day. And I think that's perhaps its appeal, is its ability to be the thing you need it to be, as opposed to an instrument that's going to take you on an emotional journey, you know.
Yeah, I think that's true. I think the other thing that's very interesting about these is they generally, Yamaha, I mean, bless them, but Yamaha do not make beautiful things. They just, their industrial design is not, it's really interesting. There was a conversation I think we were having about, it came up a few months ago. It was Richie Hawtin and Jean-Michel Jarre were just having sake or something, and there was a video, and they were just saying, isn't it funny how Japan is the home of Feng Shui and all this attention to beautiful cultural design, yet their electronic music instruments just don't have any of that, you know. And it's not just them. I mean, they just generally are not particularly beautiful anymore, and yet, you know, they're extremely functional. And I suppose this is distillation. I say workstation perhaps is a bit strong because they don't generally have a lot of sequencing in them. The Montage, they're more for phrases and arpeggiators, I seem to remember, but I could be wrong now. I can't. It's been a while since I've done anything with them. But multi-timbrality, multi-outputs. I mean, very powerful things. I mean, I don't know. Yeah, I mean, you must come across people, I guess, once you've done your work and you've made them sound fantastic and they've rocketed to the charts, they suddenly need to be able to reproduce it live, and they may look to this sort of thing. But do you get much of this stuff as a sound source in your world?
Sometimes, maybe I don't even know it, because sometimes I get like whatever sample pianos that could either come from a contact library or a Montage or Phantom or something like that, and sometimes those things really sound great, or a Nord or something like that. So usually I don't have a way of telling, because there are so many. But I think that there's something traditionally with those workstations. They sell for quite a lot. So it's justified to make them sound really good and to pack a lot of sounds. And now these days it's not a problem, because it's basically a PC and you have SSD and whatever, and the storage is not an issue. But back when they started, it was a big thing. So Roland and Yamaha and Korg, they had to really cram as much data into those machines. So they really sculpted the sounds and made them and kind of optimized them to an extent that they were the same with archive libraries and stuff, to a lesser extent actually, because you still have discs and stuff, but those were ROM players. So they put so much thought and energy and knowledge and talent and everything and those sounds became kind of iconic, like the M1 piano and things like that. And I think that tradition kind of, because I don't know what it costs, but it's in the thousands, I presume.
Well, the thing I can see about this is it looks to me like it might be further away from the motif and closer to the what's the one I reviewed? I can't even remember what it was. The more portable sort of, more plastic cased variety. It look maybe. I mean, I can't tell from the photos, but
yeah. They sound amazing, and some of them, I have no justification. I'm a guitarist and I'm not a keyboard player, so I have no justification whatsoever to get one of those, even though sometimes I wish I did as a main keyboard, because the keyboard is great and the sounds are great and everything about them. And the addition of the AN1X is great, because that's an amazing synth, and that's the first synth I got when I moved to London, which was actually 25 years ago in August, just 25 years ago. And while I was waiting for my gear to arrive by sea, I went and bought an AN1X, and that was my only synth for a while, and I loved it. And no, I had the Virus. I carried with me the Virus, and I had both, which are kind of equivalent in a way. And I love the AN1X, and it had like an editor on the PC, which was really good. And I still have the banks I've made and all that somewhere. I still have the AN1X, and it is probably the ugliest synth ever, or keyboard. It's just horrible. At the time, it was kind of futuristic looking, so maybe you could get away with it. But I have it. It doesn't have a place in my limited sort of keyboard rack, limited space I have in the keyboard rack. So I see it sometimes in the corner there, and it is an ugly thing. But the sounds. The sounds are great. It's a really beefy synth, and it didn't have the converters weren't as good as the Virus, so it always lacked some kind of brightness and punch. But if they put the engine inside the new workstation, which I'm sure has like lovely converters, then it would probably sound better than the original. So that should be interesting.
Yeah. I should clarify, I didn't say all Yamaha synths were ugly. I just said a certain pitch.
The X7 was a beautiful, and still is a beautiful, in terms of design, terms of and the Yamaha, the NS10, and they had some kind of iconic instruments, especially in the 80s and 90s.
Exactly.
But not all of them.
No, just before I get shot down in flames, go, Robin. Sorry.
I'll say, well, this sort of keyboard isn't supposed to be fashionable, I don't think, and because few of the people that they're marketing this to would be seen as hipsters or people who are trying to look cool somewhere. The Nord stage is for people like that, whereas this is a different sort of thing. I think it appeals to people who just want to sit down and play, and sit down and have extraordinary sounds come out from their fingertips and their explorations. It's that kind of thing. It's not niggling down to individual parameters necessarily, although I'm sure undoubtedly you can open up the sound
you can.
to do that.
Totally, you can.
Yeah. But it does. I think there's a massive amount of people it appeals to because of it, just the enormity of the sound engine. In the same way that I would probably prefer personally to use software. I would use software in exactly the same way. I'd dig deeply into either contact libraries or into other software synthesizers. And I can see that appeal is kind of wrapped up, taken off the computer and put into a keyboard style interface. You can sit there and play. So I kind of get it. It's just not for me, I think.
Yeah, fair enough. I think there's a massive amount of utility to these things as well, because you get input processing, you get outputs, you get MIDI control. They're generally integrating with, they've got quite close integration with the Steinberg family because they're also in the same thing. There is a lot of stuff that it will do. So it's well worth it. I imagine that we'll be seeing 88, 76, 61, whatever, the usual suspects. And the top of the range may well be, $3,000-$4,000. I don't know. It may be that it's less, because they've reduced the sort of build, the beast build like they did with the Motif, because people don't want to lug a huge amount of stuff around if they're touring. Weight becomes an issue, all of those things. Anyway, I just thought I'd mention that. So Woody, that one was for you. I hope you're not in the chat room this week, so what can I say? You're only there when you're moaning, never when you could say thank you. Anyway, right, it's probably something we should probably just have a little word from our friends over at UVI. Yes, the authentic sound of 200 synthesizers, from vintage to modern, 4,000 presets plus a dual layer engine with effects, arpeggiator and more. Also MPE native, so you can really dig into the expression on offer. It was on offer. Well, actually, what's the date today? It's the it's on offer till the 18th of December for September for €89, which is and then up to €149. But it's still a deal at the original price because you've got a lot of stuff there. So I want to say thank you very much to UVI. You can find out more at bit.ly/UVI Synth 4. We thank them very much for their support.
Cool,
okay,
blimey,
right.
200 synthesizers, eh? 200 synthesizers.
4,000 plus
Core heck.
presets, yeah. Core heck,
Yeah.
plenty of them. Gosh, I don't know where to go next. There's loads of stuff. I suppose we should go to the sort of breaking news, which is there was recently. I'll press the button and then we can come to it. So I'll press the button, and yes, this is Modal Electronic. What's up? Eagle-eyed people have sort of spotted. We'll reject the analytics cookies here. This is on the Modal Electronics site. Filing looks like there's an appointment of an administrator. Things aren't looking good on paper at this point. So obviously there's been a lot of conjecture about Modal Electronics, about what's going to happen. Oh my God, they're going to go out of business, or they are out of business. I think actually the truth of it, there was also another post, which I think Robin, you were part. You wrote, did you? So you spoke to Christian Stahl, who is the MD, and it's not quite so clean cut as that, as these things just generally aren't.
Well, yes. I mean, I should stress that I didn't speak to anyone as such. My editor at Gear News spoke to Christian and then got back to me, and then I was able to see the press release, which they should be releasing today at some point, if they haven't already. So I had a little bit of insider information and was able just to say that the word they used was complex restructuring. Now, restructuring is one of those terms which could really mean anything, but if I've taken it at face value, as I did for the article, Christian was just saying that they've been through a huge sort of shake-up and mix-about, and they are currently almost through it. And part of that is to wind down the UK operation. And it doesn't mean that the company as a whole is going anywhere. They still have retained all the staff. They're still producing product. They're still marketing towards the carbonate and the launch on that. So everything is still kind of as it was. But of course, many things in the background have changed undoubtedly, and people have moved on, or premises have changed. But the gist of it is, as I say, at face value, is that they're all fine. Thanks very much for asking. And, nothing to see here. Move along. Right.
Okay. So it looks like maybe a question of shutting down the UK operation, because the UK is probably, from a business point of view, when you're shipping things all over Europe, makes things a bit more complicated. I'd imagine if they moved it to mainland Europe, it would be easier. And obviously there's still the IP, and there's presumably a whole bunch of stock still out there in shops. I mean, probably a good idea just to download the latest version of the Modal app, just in case there's a break in transmission. I'm not saying there will be, but it's not a bad shout anyway. And of course, we've got the carbonate, which I still thought maybe what the problem is they took my marketing idea, which was to release a carbonated drink to go along with it that they could then do. And maybe that's what's done it for them. I don't know, but well, that's good news. But I mean, then again, he would say that now, wouldn't he? Because he's probably looking to get the investment sorted out and everything. But I really do hope that that's not the case. And it's always very sad when a whole brand, disappears. It doesn't happen that often. Certainly not a company that's got this many products, because they've got a bunch of products. I mean, obviously there's been transition. They've gone from their analog stuff into the sort of more digital world and a lot of people swear by the Cobalt, and I've forgotten what the other one was called now. It's completely
the Argon.
The Argon, yeah. It's nice looking and nice sounding instruments. The Cobalt I thought was sounding really lovely, actually. Have you come across any of their stuff in? Oh, sorry, Robin, I cut you off.
That's all right. Well, I was just, yes, agreeing. And I think certainly the Argon and the Cobalt have been very well regarded, and the 5S as well, which they released recently. I mean, the only blip that I can think of is that they tried to release a filter on Kickstarter, which was odd because they asked for an enormous amount of money, as if hundreds of millions of people are into Eurorack, which really they're not. So it kind of went, no, that's not going to work. So but that's the only thing that I can think of publicly that's been a little bit of a misstep for them. So it is an odd thing.
There's a lot of behind the scenes stuff, personnel stories, and I know Finlay Shakespeare had a dalliance with them at some point, and I don't think his experience was particularly positive, which he has written about. I'm not going to repeat any of that here because I don't want any litigious business going on. It's always sort of sad when this sort of thing happens, but I mean, inevitably these things do. Have you experienced any of their instruments in the flesh? Have you heard any of their stuff?
So I almost feel like I'm the cause for all this, because I was debating whether to get the Cobalt or the Hydrosynth, and I eventually went for the Hydrosynth. And had I,
very day,
gone for the Cobalt,
made all the difference.
Would have been fine, So I'm sorry about that. No, I think I really wanted the Cobalt, and yeah, I mean, I hope they get by and everything will be fine, and they'll continue making great products, and everyone will be happy.
Yeah, I mean, that's all you can hope for, really.
Say.
I mean, I think, and obviously, we hope that everybody who wants to work at the company can still work at the company, and it still all works out, obviously, when you're being employed across borders. But that's more of an issue, a logistical issue than anything. But I know Christian Stahl, who's now the MD. I mean, he started out, when I first met him, he was marketing for Behringer back in the day when Behringer did marketing. And he was the sort of one of the good guys, and has been for a long time, So and he worked for UA for a certain amount of time. Known him for a really long time. I would say he's a good egg. So I'm sure he's doing the right thing and will continue to attempt to do the right thing. I mean, I think it's just a question of they probably change of ownership and all of that back. Having to wind down one company and open another one, transfer of IP, I imagine that is quite complicated. And I do hope it works out for them and everybody comes out smelling of roses and it's all good. But I just thought we all put that one in there because, it's that thing. All right. So, gosh, there's more, isn't there? I think we need to look at what Analogue Solutions have been up to, because they seem to have been a bit prolific recently. I haven't actually got... They've two things, so we'll play this one. This is Starsky Car with the Ample, but they've also got the Maximus, which is absolutely... It's an 8-voice Analogue Poly, which is going to be about 22 grand. This one's going to be about 2 grand. So, I must admit, from what I heard, it sounded pretty good. Let me see if I can find... did I have a link for the Maximus? I thought I did. Let me see. Yeah, here we go. If I bring that up here, yeah. So there's some pictures of the Maximus as well. And this is sort of following on from the Colossus, which was sort of... It seemed to be a bonkers idea where the Colossus was just like a massive EMS synthy size, sort of university laboratory style instrument, and it just sold really well. I mean, as many, I want to say really well, enough to make it worth doing. And this is a similar kind of approach. This is 3 VCOs per voice, and what's it? $22,500 pounds. I beg your pardon. And it's along the same. What I love about this is that there are. I imagine there were people who thought I'd really love a Colossus, but it's just too big. I can't fit it in my studio. Whereas maybe the Maximus they can. I don't know. Hopefully we'll see this at Synthfest or even at Bristronica. We'll be able to actually get some hands on it. This sort of thing, it makes you feel warm inside that there are people out here doing this and it's working for them. I mean, I don't have any other thoughts of it apart from that.
Yeah, warm inside, slightly intimidated, perhaps. But I mean, it's like a flipping 8-voice, isn't it? I mean, because we've all played on that now, because we all have the Cherry Audio one or the G-Force one, the Oberheim 8-voice plug-in thing, and you can sit for hours just adjusting. With your mouse, this is me with my mouse, adjusting oscillators and bits and pieces on each of the voices. And now we can do it for real, which, well, obviously we can't, but we can go to a show where we can do it for real, perhaps. So that's very exciting. I mean, what an extraordinary thing. I think you're right about the Colossus. I mean, who is buying those things? But somebody is, and it's amazing. But I don't know where on earth I would even contemplate putting one. But the
well, that's part of the issue, isn't it?
I've got space over there. I reckon I could put that in, and that would sit quite nicely.
It doesn't go,
isn't there?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. The A3. I can't remember what it was called. Yeah, that's it's got to keep. I mean, the one thing it doesn't say is whether there's an actual polyphonic controller with auto tuning and stuff. It looks very much like, if you want to play 8 voices, fill your boots. There's the stuff, turn it up, tweak it. I mean, which would make it a lot easier to make because, as we know, big analog VCOs, keeping them in tune in a polysynth is one of life's great mysteries. It's not something that's very easy at all. And I do believe they are VCOs. So I think it's probably a manual tuner sort of scenario. Or maybe if you can afford one, then you can have a chap who would, or a lass who would just be there.
Absolutely.
Like they used to lining up the tape. Can you just tune up the synth, please? It's the same sort of deal, isn't it? The sort of tape op, the synth op. Maybe you get the same sort of deal with that. Maybe you get a month's free subscription to a synth tuner coming round and tuning you up every once in a while. But I'm glad it exists, and I bet it sounds great. I know, I don't know. I mean, this sounds like the antithesis of the sort of thing that you would want in your studio because of the repeatability issue, but it would certainly look good for your promo shots in the back wall, wouldn't it?
And at $3,000 per voice, that's it's not bad. I think that, if you talk about kind of a central or a way to control the tuning, then I think for me to even consider something like that, I mean, it's way out of what I'm willing to spend on a synthesizer. But the ability to sync the controllers, so you can adjust it from, like you can do on the GeForce OBX. Which. That's the benefit of working. And by the way, I will say it again, the GeForce plugin is I think the best virtual analog synths out there in software. It sounds amazing. It has that quality of analog that you don't often get. You hardly get, or you don't, from any other software synth. But for me to even consider something like that, it will have to be able to set up the preset on one module to be,
that would be good, wouldn't it?
All the others, and then if you want to detune or to tweak or whatever, then you can go from there. But if you have to, for every patch or every change you want to make, you have to do it 8 times. It's and also, why not make a 4-voice kind of version of that for $10,000, that way, because how many times you actually use I have the Pulse, the Waldorf Pulse. I have 4 of them, and I have this software that Polymer, it's called, that kind of assigns the voice, so I can play it polyphonically, and obviously I control it through software. And 4 voices, that's enough for most things. And if you have to record like a pad with a long release or something like that, then you can always. I'm not using it for live, so I'm always at the studio. So it's not a problem for me to mute every other chord and record one pass, and then
right,
do the opposite,
that would sound
and record
massive.
Another pass. Yeah. You know what I mean? So 4 voices should do the trick for most. Also, for something like that, you would mostly use it for bass lines and leads and stuff anyway.
I'm assuming ultimately. No, I suppose
that's
not.
That's not Tom. Tom is go big or go home. Time and time again. I
assume that all of these things, essentially it says it's an 8-voice poly. I can't see any. I need to find more details about whether or not there is a specific polyphonic aspect to maybe a controller module or something which makes any of those potential, tuning issues or, copy settings from one to another or control one. If you had the ability to have CV control of the top module that just essentially mirrored down to all of the controls on the other one, but you could also break that. That would make a lot of sense, but you'd still need to be able to just tune them, probably tweak them and tune them. But good for him. I mean, I really hope we will see it at Synthfest or Bristronica. I mean, that's what I'm hoping. So yeah, nice one. So do check it out.
He missed a trick by not putting in those automated knobs from the Nina synth. If the whole thing moved and you can move one voice and the rest moved with it, surely you could, for another 10 grand, you could put a layer of control in like that. So there you go. That's a tip for you there, Tom. Stick that in.
Excellent.
That'll be a winner.
That sounds good. Okay, well, you can have that for nothing. All right, brilliant. Okay, I'm just going to play a message from our friends over at, where is it? Oh, yeah, iZotope. Craft the perfect listening experience with the ultimate collection of mastering tools, whether you're putting the finishing touches on the next chart-topping hit or producing your first song. Ozone 11 delivers cutting-edge processing and AI-powered workflows. Effortlessly make your tracks release ready and unlock the full potential of your productions. And don't forget, if you use the code SONIC10 at iZotope.com/Sonictalk, you can save 10%. But it's also part of various bundles as well, where you can pick up a whole bunch of the latest software, which is, I think it's the latest music production suite. Thanks very much to them for their continued support. Okay, let's see. Gaz is in the chat room. Just want to point out he mentioned he did a great video where he went to the Synth Museum in Austria with Florian from Bad Gear, and I think they were supposed to have a show last week where they were going to talk about it, but now they're coming on this week. So if you want to check that out, that's at 8 o'clock this evening, I believe, or somewhere around then on the Gaz Williams channel, so at Gaz Williams. So do check that out. All right. I'm wondering whether or not, we've been talking about these kind of mergers and acquisitions to a degree, or certainly financial shenanigans. We probably should just give a quick nod to Miss Katy Perry, who has just, if I think I pressed that should work. Yeah. Katy Perry sells her entire music catalog, well, from 2008 to 2020, $350 million. That's actually US dollars, so it's more close to 225 million. So, still a lot. This is quite interesting. I mean, I don't know, lots of people don't like sort of high pop. I think Katy Perry pop music is the absolute pinnacle of that kind of thing, and she's written some absolute bangers, and some of those are going to be included in that. It's an interesting thing that private equity group has bought this, which I always find it's a bit opaque. You just sort of think, couldn't it be like a record label or someone we've heard of who is involved in music rather than some sort of investment company? But yeah, it's via Litmus Music, announced on Monday they would enter a creative partnership with Perry that included management of the 5 studio albums she released on Capitol Records: One of the Boys, Teenage Dream, Prison, Witness and Smile. But yeah, a bit opaque, but it does make you think, well worth writing those songs. Imagine, one of those. So that would mean that's 5 albums. So let's say 60 songs. What does that equal per song? So 225 million per song. That's a bunch, isn't it? That's like 3 million quid a song. No, 30 million quid a song or something. Anyway, a lot. Hi, Robin. You have any songwriting aspirations? Does this sort of thing make you think, I really should, or there's no point, it's all about high finance? It does feel a bit mucky somehow, even though I'm kind of pleased for her because she can afford some nice dresses and holidays and stuff.
Yeah, there's no romance in it though, really, is there? I mean, there's not even any rock and roll for that matter. It doesn't feel very... I don't know. It doesn't sort of embody the spirit of music and what we got into songwriting for. I mean, I've got a SoundCloud somewhere near my MySpace page that I can, that shows off my songwriting prowess. It's a lovely idea that the effort that you put into something like that does eventually grow some kind of fruit and ends up financing a small third world country. I think there is a story in that. I'm not sure where any of us fit into it. It seemed to be a very much another worldly, another place of, as you say, mergers and acquisitions where people are funneling money around from ridiculous places to places. I'm not sure how that affects anybody. And in some ways, I mean, isn't it ultimately taking money out of the industry? Isn't it some other group of people now has control over this stuff who hasn't necessarily got any interest in the emotional impact that people have with this music other than it being a commodity? and I wonder whether that's useful or helpful. Ultimately, does it just help the Perry estate and her legacy, I suppose? Is that a bad thing, good thing? I don't know. We're ultimately very precious about our music and how we feel about it, and this sort of thing throws that into, I don't know, it puts a very bright light, I think, on something that we want to keep warm, cozy, and somehow emotionally connected to ourselves. So well, there you go, there's a bunch of thoughts.
I would agree. I suppose what we don't know is what she's likely to do. You know, maybe she's going to start her own label and start bringing talent through. I mean, we just don't know what you would do. I don't know what anybody would do that sort of money, but she could do a lot of stuff. But it's interesting, isn't it? I mean, pop music is... It's considered by many, you know, when you're a kid, it's aspirational, but when you're doing, I mean, you know, Yoad, I was looking, just happened to look the other day because there was a whole bunch of stuff that came out. I said, I think Yoad mixed one of those, and you've done a lot of mixes at that sort of level with that sort of material for that kind of, that pop thing. Do you get a sense that there's, I mean, is it just money, or is it about success? Or, I mean, you know, what are the motivating factors, do you think, behind the thing? Because some pop bands are manufactured, some are authentic. Like Katy Perry struggled for a long time. You know, she wrote loads and loads and loads of songs, and her story is quite a, you know, it's your classic. Went to LA, tried to make it, didn't make it, got knocked back a load of times, and then finally, you know, look who I am now. It's kind of, that's a beautiful story in many ways.
I think it's the same story for everyone. You know, we all love music and we all make music, and we're somewhere on the scale, on the same scale. It's just where we are. You know, I was involved in the, like you said, a lot of kind of high-end mixing and production and stuff like that. Still am. But I also was involved, and still am, with a lot of writing. Songs, and I have over 200 songs that I've co-wrote, registered on PRS. Not for that kind of money, unfortunately. But you know, it pays the bills, and it's passive income, and it allows me to buy the gear I want to buy and to do the things I you know, it's great to have that kind of thing, and I encourage anyone who is listening or who is watching us to write, because that's where the money is. There's money in neighboring rights, in performing rights and stuff, and that is because I'm involved in a lot of production and additional production where I play and do programming and stuff like that. You know that, Nick, because you
absolutely.
So that's decent money as well. But obviously publishing is where the big money is. I suspect that these kind of big purchases or whatever you want to call it, or transfer of rights and all that, I think it has to do with NFT. And I think that these investors are planning to make the money back by redistributing the rights through NFT somehow. I'm not an expert in that field, but I have a feeling that it's part of you know, they're not buying it to just sit on it and no. You know what I mean?
They because these are
songs that have done their kind of big income wave. You know, when a song is released or when a product is released, you get the big surge of income, and then throughout the years it kind of, you know, it's like an ADSR thing. It's like it's like a piano curve or something like that. That's not my thing. I'm not in the music business.
No, but it is interesting. I mean, I should point out, I mean, full disclosure, I've written 2 or 3 songs that continue to assist in my income stream and PRS on records that I've played for. I haven't done it for a long time, but it is, if you do get the opportunity and you are doing it, kids out there, anybody, make sure you get your name down in the right place, because you might think, oh no, it's fine, I don't want to get involved in all that stuff, but it really is worth doing, because there is a revenue stream there. I mean, it sounds a bit sort of cold talking about those things, but that shouldn't mean that because you have a warm feeling about maybe the creative moment that it was done in, that you shouldn't still be being paid for your work when it was done, when there is income that's being generated for that. Otherwise it just goes into a big pot and probably goes to Beyonce or somebody, So I mean, it's you should definitely do that. I mean, I think the reason I brought this up really wasn't to focus on the fact that look how much money it generates. It's more about, if you do write and if you do things creative, it's important to make sure that you write things down. In fact, I was talking to Matt Hodson, and he was saying you should register the theme tune at the end of this, which has been played on 700 odd episodes or however many it is now. And I thought about it and I started the process. Then I thought, no, because every time I release a Sonic Talk, I'm going to have a copy. It's going to get a copyright strike against me, which would be kind of weird. I mean, not that we spend a lot of time monetizing it, but the monetizing is in the ad. So maybe I should do it. I don't know. But then, all of these things, they add up. I made the music. I put the music down. There's no reason to feel dirty about making sure that you do the necessary admin and paperwork. It does seem a bit difficult if you've not done it, but you can do it via CD Baby and all these other places. They'll look after it for you. You don't necessarily have to have a big deal and talk to record labels, but I just think it's important that you do, so that if you are creative, there is a way for you to get recompense. I think that's all I was one of the reasons I put this in there, to a degree. I suppose that would be a fair point to agree with. Yeah, I mean, it's great if you've got massive checks every quarter, but most of us don't really get that sort of thing. But it's just a little bit extra that is worth making sure you're due. If you're due, you do it anyway. And I suppose that happens, and it's not just pop music that happens in, really, either, is it? I mean, it's in all kinds of stuff. It can be in, library music. It can be in ambient music if it gets used. There's a guy, DJ Puzzle, Jason Donnelly, who's based in LA. He's made a career out of doing this stuff, and now he's been doing it so long, you end up with such a big body of work, and we know a few other people that do it. They get to sit in their studios and noodle all day. They do have to come up with, I need a short version, a long version, a version without this, a version without the theme, a bit that can loop. That's a bit boring, but they essentially get to be creative in their own space, and then people can buy and license their music. That's another way that you can get stuff without having to work specifically to a client, because not everybody's cut out for that. I mean, I don't know, Robin, have you had any commercial music experience where you've had to somebody says, I need something that's a bit like the Magic Roundabout theme, but with modular and heavy guitars, please? By 5 o'clock.
Oh, I have a little bit, but of course what you do immediately is step away from the modular, because there's no way I'm going to be able to replicate that when the guy comes around and says, oh, can I have a listen then? Say, well, just a minute, I've got to rebuild the instrument first. So I have had a little, but it is interesting. It's a fascinating thing, and actually it's helpful from someone who's usually sitting in their shed fiddling by themselves to have someone come in and say, I want something a bit like this. It's like, oh really? That's my whole thinking time has just been squashed down to it's like, I don't really need to think about it now. I just need to do it a bit like this. So I think that can be helpful. I mean, legend says that Simon Cowell played like triangle or something on every single track that he ever recorded when he was a tape op in a studio somewhere, and that's where all his fortune came from. So if that's true, that's what we should be doing, I guess.
I think his fortune came from selling and exploiting the rights to Britain's Got Talent and the X Factor. Before that, I have a story. Story about Simon Cowell. So when I was a lad, we did a remix of Sonita. And we did. Nice. It was a song called "Love and Affection." It wasn't any of the cheesy. So it was an old Joan Armour Trading song. They'd done a version of it. We just happened to be a bit more sort of, flavoured at the time. Completely, we did a remix. It was pretty ropey, I don't mind saying, but for some reason the record company chose it, and they decided that we needed to go to the studio where they recorded it. So I had to go and sit with the original producers of the track, who was daggers at me, looking at me like, how did you get away with this? Why aren't they using ours? Because we're not going to get the mechanicals, you know, whatever, because they were pros and we were just sort of chancers. So Sunita came in, she was the other side of the glass, you know, pretending to sing the song. There was for some news piece, and we were supposed to sit there kind of going, yeah, that's good. And I somehow we were collaborating with the original producers in whatever the storyboard of this news item was. And at the end of it, Simon Cowell came in to pick her up because they were going out with each other. That's my Simon Cowell story. But and at the same time, my partner, daughter, mother of our child, she was working as a temp agent in London and happened to work for Simon Cowell as a temp agent for like 2 weeks at the same time. How coincidental is that? Anyway, that's not really anything to do with anything. I just thought I'd throw it out there because you might find it amusing. Right. I don't have anything else to say. Anybody got anything to add? It doesn't really matter.
I would just I just remembered, you know, BBC Click. So I wrote the theme and all the music for that. So that's something that, again, it's, you know, it's played all over BBC World, obviously in the UK and stuff, and you know,
nice.
and that was fun. That was actually fun to do because it's a show about kind of gadgets and technology and all that. A lot of blips and stuff like that. Unfortunately, with the Skype theme that I did, that all belongs to Microsoft, so I don't get any of that because that could
it's a buyout.
Be big money.
A buyout.
Like 40 million people a day listen to it or hear it or something like that. You know,
that's pretty good.
That could be nice, but that's Microsoft.
Well, there was a guy in Bath. There was a guy in Bath who wrote the music for the Trade Test Transmission, and he legendarily built a studio and a commercial studio out of that. But that was back. I mean, the thing is nowadays. I mean, without getting too sidetracked, nowadays most, you know, previously you would be commissioned to do a piece, you know, you might get a fee, then you'd also get a back end. Now most production houses and most places, they want to do a buyout. They don't want to be paying or administrating royalties for all of that stuff. So quite often if you're working for Discovery or whatever, particularly if you're not a big name, I suspect Ty gets residuals, but most people don't. You know, most people, it's a hard thing to get. It's just a one-off license.
Yeah, there's the story about the Nokia, you know, tune that it was bought for like $150 or something like that by the guy, from the guy who composed it.
Right.
Yeah.
Ouch.
One of those.
Anyway, there are lots of these sort of stories. The industry is filled with them, I'm sure we could probably go on for ages about it. But I want to say, I'm probably going to wrap things up now because I'm going to wrap. My daughter's going to university this weekend, and it's quite a lot of change in our household.
Wow.
So we're spending as much time as we can with her before she disappears and becomes an adult and has to do her own washing and all of those things. So we've got 3 days to train her up is basically what I'm saying, and I need to get back and show her how to cook some spuds, but she'll be all right. So thank you so much, everybody. Robin, what's next for you? Have you got a video coming up? You doing your Sunday modular roundup? Roundup show?
Modal Music Technology is 10 years old in a couple of weeks, and so I've got to somehow come up with something interesting in look, I'm 10 and this is what we did kind of thing. And the enormity of that, of trawling back through all the videos and trying to pull out interesting clips is starting to weigh on me a little bit. So I'll probably just do a quick bit to camera and that'll probably be it. But it's exciting to think about. It is actually, the day is the Synthfest day, funnily enough. So if you see me there, do feel free to buy me a synthesizer. That'd be lovely.
Okay. For 10, I've got a Patreon or something. Can people kind of support you in some way to say thanks for 10 years of great stuff?
They certainly can. All that sort of thing. They're very welcome to.
Brilliant.
Everyone's very welcome to come on board.
Right, excellent. Well, thanks very much for joining us, Robin. And also, Yoad, I guess you're going back to your super massive kick. In fact, there was a great comment. I couldn't pitch it because it had an illegal character in it, so it didn't get the whole thing. But it was essentially something along the lines of, what was it? Fat, hard, harmonic, whatever. They're the new Snow White and the Seven Dwarves. They're sort of the kick descriptors instead. So you're going back to listening to kick really, really loudly for an hour or two, yeah?
Something like that, and I'm going back to the UK, to my studio tomorrow. And I have to mention that online mastering, the Waves mastering service, AI mastering service that my team has worked on at Waves for many years, was finally released, and that's the last product that I was involved with or kind of worked on before I left Waves. So that's kind of a sentimental moment for me, and I hope it goes well. It's a really good product. So yeah, that's an end of an era.
Yeah, well, seems to be a lot of it about. We're all having ends of eras at the moment, but hopefully beginnings of lots of new ones as well. That's just a sort of a page turn in the rich tapestry of life, or some other mixed metaphor. I'm not quite sure. Anyway, thank you very much for joining us. Thanks to everybody. Don't forget, there's no show next week, but we'll be back on the 27th, the 3rd or 4th. I can't remember when the next Wednesday is. Anyway, that's it for this week. Thank you very much. We'll see you all next time. Bye-bye now.